Welcome back, everybody. Today we are doing an update on Celsius. We're going to hear from Kevin O'Leary, who guarantees it will be going to zero. And then we're also going to hear his opinion on another Bitcoin capitulation, which he also says is guaranteed. So let's get started. We have a big video ahead. So the first thing that I want to cover is just a quick overview on where we're at with the whole Celsius situation. If you're not familiar, Celsius Network is really similar to BlockFi. They offered crazy staking rewards, 18, 19% APY for stables, and then even some crypto as well. And really what started to happen as Bitcoin started to capitulate is a lot of these assets that Celsius held as leverage were also dropping in value. So at a very basic, summarized level, what happened is that with that money that folks were putting into Celsius was turning around and taking enormous risks with those users' funds. And as you can see, they kind of cover their ass here a little bit, and excuse my French, but in their kind of terms and conditions, they say any eligible digital assets used in the earn service or as collateral under the borrower service may not be recoverable, and you may not have any legal remedies or rights in connection with Celsius's obligations to you or other rights of the creditors. So in other words, it's going to be gone. You're not going to get it back if they collapse, right? And so now we're kind of in this serious issue where, it's an issue of liquidity, right? They essentially counted on liquidity being there, and they focused on an emphasis on rapid user growth at all costs. And, which this article is saying is, and it's very clear, that's not sustainable, right? So they were offering those crazy staking rewards for the most easy and mundane activities, just like submitting your stable coins. And that's naturally going to create a bank run over time when everyone rushes back to take those funds out in the event of a market crash, which is what we were seeing. Now, the most recent update basically is in the last week or so, Celsius essentially canceled and paused all AMAs, and they basically left customers wondering, hey, when can we withdraw again? Because they paused withdrawals over a week ago now at this point, and it's really getting concerning for a lot of users. So now with that background context, we're going to hear from Kevin O'Leary on why he says it's guaranteed Celsius will go to zero. Here we go.
No, we're not. There's lots of precedents for this in history. To get a bottoming in an asset class, you need a major player to basically be offside. In the case of Celsius, it is going to go to zero. It's over-levered. It's gated now. And the trouble with gating, a good example would be a hedge fund. Every single customer wants to be liquid the minute you open the gate. And so it's a realizing outcome. It will go to zero. It'll have no assets. But that's important. It's not enough. It's not big enough. I'm looking for something bigger. Somebody out there is in trouble. We don't know who they are yet. We'll find out soon. It'll probably happen in the next 30 days. Some giant player is going to zero because this is the first time applying leverage to an asset class that most people assumed wouldn't be this volatile, but has proven to be volatile yet again. And I say all this, and it's important that this happens. It's bad for the individual investors, but in the context of making this market more educated, more institutional, more stable, with better price discovery and less leverage, you need these players to go to zero. So Celsius, thank you for your sacrifice. They'll go to zero, but they're not big enough. They're a small bit player doing something really bad, using leverage to offer 15 to 18% staking, which of course is going to go to zero. But
now, with that additional information, I also want to show you guys a clip of Kevin O'Leary discussing the next Bitcoin capitulation, which he says is inevitable. And so we're going to watch that clip, and then we're going to dive into where our next potential buy points could be based on Kevin O'Leary's targets. So here we go, Kevin O'Leary on the next Bitcoin capitulation.
Should that blow up happen, where would you see the price of Bitcoin then? I mean, when would be, what do you think is structurally where things would be once this supernova event occurs?
Well, we need two things. We need that capitulation event, and I'm sure we're going to get it, and that's a very good thing, and I've given you the reasons why. It'll be chaos in the streets kind of thing. Bitcoin will probably drop down significantly. I don't know, maybe another 20% down. Who knows? It's impossible to know. But again, it's a good thing. It's the beginning of a bottoming process. Then we need one of these bills that's floating around Congress right now, and I would suggest the one that I'm most interested in is the simplest to pass. That's going to be the Haggerty or Toomey bill that contemplates auditing stable coins, which is a really easy thing to do and would make it much. And if we just could get some policy on one thing and it was stable coins, that would really be good, because you would start to know with certainty that you get some movement from the institutional client to allocate.
So as you heard Kevin say, almost guaranteed there's another Bitcoin capitulation coming up in the next 30 days. And in addition to that, it's probably going to be caused by another big player getting liquidated. So with that information in mind, let's talk about where our next potential targets could be in a second Bitcoin capitulation. So if we just start off by saying, okay, if Kevin O'Leary is directly on, as you said, as you heard in that little clip, he's talking about a potential 20% capitulation. He said maybe even more. And so 20% from where we're at right now at about 21,000, that would put us down near 15, 16K, and then put us kind of in this rectangular zone, between 14 and 18K in terms of areas to maybe start looking at re-entering Bitcoin, right? Because obviously, the top end of that zone is going to be our previous support, which will likely be flipped into resistance if we do fall below this. And the lowest we had seen was just under 18K. 17.7 is kind of where we wicked down, 17.9. So I would look for that as kind of the flipped resistance in the event of another capitulation. So, something similar to, coming down here, maybe we bounce on this a little, but then we do have that capitulation. And then, I would likely say if that capitulation happens, we have this flip into resistance. And then all of a sudden we're battling, 17.9 as our high water mark, and likely going much lower than that, maybe even under 15K as well. So I would say in terms of expectations, something between 14 and 17K, very, very likely in the event of another massive liquidation or capitulation for Bitcoin. Now, you may be saying, hey, we already fell, from this 31K mark, we already fell, almost 50%, right? But given what I'm seeing on the chart, we still have plenty of room to find a bear market bottom. We covered some of this in some previous videos, but if we look at where we were in terms of an RSI at previous bear market bottoms, we were looking at something close to 15 down here, and then we even had something closer to 9 or 8 on the RSI, super oversold back here in this 2017-2018 bear market. And if we look right now where we're at, we are at the lowest we've gone in this most recent capitulation bear market, whatever you want to call it. The lowest we've gone is about 21 on that oversold side for the RSI. So we have plenty of room to capitulate further, even though we've seen such a, it seems like we've already had to, show a lot of stamina going through this downturn, but we have plenty of room to give on the chart in terms of technicals. Obviously long-term, if you're super long-term, anything under this 200-day simple moving average, tends to be a good chance to dollar cost average. But I would be careful because of how serious and how concerned Kevin O'Leary is, as well as others that we're hearing in the market of a potential another capitulation. And then also what we've seen in previous bear markets. We haven't quite seen that level of pain that we've seen in previous bear markets today, right? So we still have quite a bit of ways to go in terms of maybe finding a potential bottom. Now, obviously, I'm just kind of doing my best guesses here and taking all the information I have. But if I were to, place a bet on it, I would say between somewhere, 14 to 17K is where we're going to start playing in terms of our range, hopefully in the next few months leading up to those midterms in November, where hopefully we get some regulation. So the next thing I just want to set in terms of expectations here is if we do end up having this, Kevin O'Leary predicted capitulation, we go down to 14K, maybe lower, maybe a little higher. What would be our next target, right? What would get us out of the woods in terms of looking to the upside? And really, it's this 27.2 mark, right? And so what that tells me is that if we do end up capitulating, we have quite a long time ahead of us of probably ranging in this lower fib area. So I wouldn't expect a reversal quickly from that bottom. I would expect, a long period of ranging, testing new highs, setting higher lows, hopefully. But we're likely going to be ranging in that lower fib section between that 0 and 0.236 for quite some time before we get, let's say, bullish news on regulation in November or something else that takes us to the upside. So that's what I'm seeing. I saw that Kevin O'Leary interview, thought it was pretty informative, and then wanted to tie in my analysis. Hopefully this was helpful. Let me know what else you want me to cover in the comments, and you guys have a great one. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.